There we go. I think we got the audio worked out. Yes, we did. Okay, cool. Sorry about that, guys. First part of the show. But we're going to talk about that. So you do have some things to be thankful for. I think Matt was thankful for the fact that he didn't have to watch the Raiders for a couple weeks. And then we will take a look at the Raiders 2018 draft class, Matt. We're going to look down and see how they've fared thus far. It's a little bit of a mixed bag, as draft always is. So we'll do that as well. From Colton Miller to Mo Hurst to Johnny Townsend.
Especially when the team is this bad.
Yeah.
It's almost unfair to evaluate guys like that.
It is
but,
true. Yeah.
It's got to be done.
It's got to be. Somebody's got to do it, Matt, and we're the guys to do it, right? That's just how it goes. And we'll go through the rest of the guys and see how they've panned out thus far, 11 weeks into the season. In the second hour, we talked to former Raider great. I'm excited about this one. Wide receiver Swervin Mervyn Fernandez, one of my favorite nicknames. He'll be with us live on the Attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line. We'll talk to him about his career with the Raiders, his journey to the NFL, and get his take on the current state of the Silver and Black. And I love Mervyn, Matt, as you'll hear when we talk to him. Real honest, straightforward guy. And really, I believe, part of one of the most underrated teams in Raiders history, and that is the 1990 squad that went 12-4. Of course, they got shellacked against Buffalo in the AFC Championship, but that was Art Shell's first full season. Mm-hmm. So we're going to hear about that. I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion as well. Good stuff. Then Matt climbs under center for his popular Audible segment. He'll choose a random subject and we'll discuss and talk about that. Then we'll close the show right before kickoff between the Raiders and the Ravens with an in-depth analysis of the game and give you our take on how things will go. I don't think they'll go well. Can they win 2 weeks in a row on the road, the Raiders? Can they stop rookie quarterback Lamar Jackson? I think they can. I don't know that it'll matter. I'm giving you a preview. We'll discuss that. Always, we take your calls to Raider Nation. Ring us up at 702-889-5978. Sound off about anything, including today's game. All right. There you go, Raider Nation. You are up to date now. So,
Scott, I know you get here early and you set up these cameras and everything, but what were you really doing in studio? Because there's a DVD lying around here.
Gotta show them. I'll give you
this. Scott talks about how early he gets here to get things going, but I have a feeling he was doing something else in here. And don't get any ideas. Nothing bad.
It's Avengers. Yeah, if you're watching, you'll see. No, this was a very thoughtful birthday gift from our engineer David Stepanian.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
great movie.
Yes, he came in today. He said, "Happy birthday!" I was like, "Wow."
Is today your birthday, Scott?
Today is my birthday. I'm on the air on my birthday.
Happy birthday!
Thank you, brother.
I did not know that.
That's okay. That's all right. So he gave me a movie, which I am thankful for, and that is very nice of him. So, all right. So let's jump in, Matt. Now you've been away a little bit, and while you were gone, the Raiders won. They won a game. Now.
Did they win or did Arizona lose?
I want. That's a good question.
Man,
when you're
have you ever seen a team more willing to give you a victory than Arizona was against the Raiders last weekend? That was incredible. You like you said, I was gone, so I didn't get to watch anything live. When I got home, my DVR had 1% of memory left on it, so I had to start going through things. And I started with the Raiders and the Golden Knights.
Yeah.
And eventually I'll make it to UNLV, but I haven't gotten there yet. I was shocked at what I was watching in that final maybe 4.5 minutes, especially with the Raiders punting the ball inside their own 10-yard line. Another fantastic punt. You just alluded to that a little while ago. And the Cardinals get the ball in plus territory with the lead with, just over 3 minutes to go. And somehow the Raiders get the ball back with this fantastic defense they have and find a way to win the game. I mean, that was just... It was very Raider-esque what the Cardinals did, to be honest with you.
I love it. So when they win, we're even negative about them. But you're right. But at the same time, to me, one of the big things, and I know it's only one game. We're going to talk about the draft picks later in this show, Matt. But Marcell Aitman's catch, his 2 catches actually, late in that game were very encouraging because, let's face it, this roster has been cut and cut and cut down to the bare bones. You've had Jordy Nelson hurt. You've had Martavis Bryant out hurt as well. To see Aitman, who you and I think, have liked all along, and he's never had an opportunity, he finally got an opportunity, and it paid off.
Yeah, he was on our draft board. If you remember, before the draft last summer, we talked about who we'd like to see the Raiders pick up at some point, and I actually had Aitman because receiver was still an issue at this point. This was before the Bryant signing. I had Aitman in the, I believe, 3rd round for the Raiders. I thought he was a great get for them, and he obviously went much later in the draft, but they still came away with him. He's got good size, great hands. He's not a burner. He's not going to go out there and just run by people, but he runs good routes, and he finds a way to get open. That catch you were talking about, he gets in between that cover 2, and Carr laid it in there perfectly, and he makes that grab, and that was essentially the difference in the game. That's really what put them down there in good spot to get the field goal. So it's nice to see, as bad as these injuries are, and you hate to see guys banged up and not being out there on the field, it's nice to see a guy like Aitman finally get a shot to get on the field because he could be part of the future. He's a Gruden draft pick, obviously, came out of this last draft, and they need help at wide receiver. They need weapons on offense.
Well, and you can't, with the needs that the Raiders have, you don't want to spend a 1st, 2nd, maybe even 3rd round pick on a guy like a wide receiver. So if Marcell Aitman can really pick it up and play well the rest of the season and solidify perhaps a starting spot, at least at wide receiver 2, maybe, then or even 3, then it's a win, right? And we're going to talk about that later. But to me, Matt, I think the bigger issue for the Raiders last week was some positive momentum. They've had very little all season. The Cleveland game you talked about who wanted to win the game against the Cardinals.
Yeah.
The Cleveland game, the only win they had previous to that, was even uglier. So the fact that the Raiders came out, and I asked this question on Silver and Black today on the Twitter handle, with draft order a big area of conversation in Raider Nation, do you want the Raiders to win tomorrow, i.e. today? This was from yesterday, right? Because you hear a lot of people, I don't want to win, I want to tank. And you had Derek Carr comment this week, look, I want to screw up the draft order, I want to win games. So we asked the question of our listeners and fans, and 72% said they wanted to win, 28% said no, tank it. Now, I don't understand, I understand if you're in a situation where you can play a bunch of young guys, and if that means tanking it because basically you're out of the playoff hunt, okay, fine, right? So if you had a quarterback, let's say, that was a rookie, and you wanted to see how he could do, fine, put him in there. I get that part of tanking it. But with this whole conversation, I didn't want them to win last week. You have Raider Nation complaining that the team doesn't win, and then when they do win, you complain that they won.
Here's what's so ridiculous about that. If you go back, just let's say the last 15 years, the best draft pick the Raiders got, the very best player they got out of any of their drafts was Khalil Mack. I don't think that's debatable. Nope. Khalil Mack, most talented, most effective guy that they picked up. The absolute worst draft pick was probably Jamarcus Russell.
Sure.
Jamarcus Russell was their number 1 overall pick. Khalil Mack went number 4 in that draft. It doesn't matter where you pick. You have to get the right guy.
That's
you
right.
could be the number 1 pick every year. It doesn't mean you're going to select the right guy. You can miss on that pick all the time. The Browns have done it for decades. The Raiders have done it a ton lately. There are countless times when guys have or teams have gone after a guy because he's either a college stud or they think he has the right potential, and they completely miss on him. Example after example. 1 through 5, it doesn't really matter. You have to get your guy. You have to get the guy that's going to fit best with your team and the area of need that you feel is going to help you out the most. Win games. That's what you want to do. You want to see guys out there, and these guys should all be playing for their jobs right
Absolutely.
Now because 50% turnover last season. You know it's going to be that again this season. These guys have to prove to Gruden that they can play, so they should all be playing as hard as they possibly can, trying to show, look, I can be part of the Raiders' future going forward. I need to be here. I want to see them go out and win games.
Right, and that's where I think you have to, if you're a fan, you have to look at the team right now and who they have and say, okay, who out of these guys is going to be the guy? I like Jalen Richard. I think that guy is underutilized, and I think now he's going to get a chance to say, hey, you know what, I am the guy. And to do that, you want to win games. So to me, that is a big deal, and you should want to win games. And whether you pick 3rd, 5th, or 1st, you still got to execute. And to your point, Matt,
you got to nail the pick, man.
That's right. All right. Well, we are going to step aside. When we come back, we're going to talk to Vinny Bonsignore from the Athletic Los Angeles, who will join us to talk a little bit about the Rams game. We got to talk about that game. It was freaking amazing. And we'll also talk to him about the Raiders, Derek Carr, and more. You're listening to the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. in Las Vegas.
1140.
Callers and guests on the Newsmaker line are brought to you by the Law Office of Michael A. Troiano. The only way to take Silver and Black today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back. Football Sunday. The Raiders at the Ravens coming up at 10 a.m. Of course, we are your official pregame show today, right, Matt?
Yes, sir.
Early, I love when there's early AFC kickoffs. It gives you a little more. Usually, when I wasn't working all Sundays, it was great because you get the game, have fun. If it went well for your team, you were good, and then you could go out and do stuff with the family, see a movie or whatever.
No, it takes me like 35 minutes to get home from here, so I missed the whole first quarter. I got to listen to it on the radio, man.
Oh man! Oh wow, that's not fun. All right, well, we are again joined as we are every week. By our friend Vinny Bonsignore of the Athletic Los Angeles, who joins us from L.A., and the Rams, who Vinny covers regularly, are on a bye this week, Vinny. So I feel bad we had to wake you up today.
Oh, no question, no worries about it. First of all, hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving, and the bye week could not have come at a better time for the Rams after Monday night's just epic 15-round heavyweight fight against the Kansas City Chiefs and everything else that they've been going through, personally and locally here in Southern California. But then also they've been going at it really hard since training camp, basically. And a tough schedule and some tough games, and they needed this break. There's no question about it.
Well, and Vinny and Matt was on a boat, so he missed the game. But
you know what's funny?
Did you
Scott,
see highlights at least?
We were back in Florida at the time,
okay.
So we were at the park, and we got on the bus to go back to the hotel, and my wife happened to check her fantasy score and said, hey, this Rams game is nuts right now. So we put it on my phone, and we actually caught the fourth quarter. That was the first sporting event we had seen in about 9 days at that point.
Oh, my gosh.
So it's a good one to jump into.
It was. So, Vinny, now being there and covering the game, of course, I watch you on Twitter during the games anyway, so I saw what you're doing. But, again, we are a Raiders show, but this was one of the greatest football games, at least in our lifetime. And it was phenomenal from start to finish. I mean, backwards, forward, you saw great quarterbacks. You saw great. And people forget, yes, 50-point, the loser had over 50 points the first time that's happened. But there was also some great defensive plays. I mean, being there for you, the ups and downs, covering it from a media perspective, was it as nuts for you as it was for us?
Yeah, there's no question about it. And I think that the one thing to keep in mind is sometimes when you get games like that, it's entertaining, it's fun, but there really isn't anything at stake. And while there wasn't anything necessarily tangibly, at stake in that game, there was a lot at stake. When you're talking about just confidence and being able to go toe-to-toe with another, powerhouse. For the Rams, it's keeping pace with the Saints right now, for home field advantage, and for the Chiefs as well in the AFC playoffs. So there was something on the line. Those were two heavyweights going at it, and to see them, not flinch and just keep throwing punches, and both teams coming back. I think there were 6 lead changes, and for the Rams to get the ball back and Jared Goff to drive them for a touchdown, great pass to Gerald Everett to not seal the win, but put them ahead and give them the cushion to withstand another couple of tries by the Chiefs. It was a roller coaster ride, and I was down on the field for like the last 6 minutes or so, and just looking around, thinking to myself, I've seen a lot of great games at the Coliseum, going all the way back to when the Raiders were there, when the Rams were there as a little kid, but definitely saw some pretty good games when the Raiders were there. That had to have been the best game that I've ever seen at that venue. And that venue's had a lot of great games. So just a great entertainment for the fans. And I think that we say this all the time, but really nobody walked off that field a loser. Everybody won that night.
Well, Vinny, you want to talk about a roller coaster? Go all the way back to before the game even started and the issues in Mexico and the playing surface down there. Were you down there? Did you get a good view of the field? What was that like? And how do you go from being in Mexico, getting ready to play a game, and then having to go all the way back to L.A. in front of your home fans? Did you think that affected anything as far as the outcome of this game is concerned?
Well, keep in mind we hadn't quite made it to Mexico when the announcement was made. The Rams made the decision to go to Colorado Springs last week to prepare for the high altitude of Mexico City. So we we had all just gotten to Colorado Springs. The Rams got there Monday night. We got there Tuesday morning. And then the announcement came on Tuesday evening that, you know what, this field is not going to be ready in time for an NFL game in 6 days. So at that point, it was okay. The game's going to be back in Los Angeles. Behind the scenes, people don't understand, when you're not supposed to have a game at a venue and then you have to, rally together to get a football game, an NFL game going at that venue, tickets, all media credentials, parking, the school was in at USC. So that side of it was just chaos. But from the players' perspective, okay, we're not playing in Mexico City. We're going to go play in Los Angeles. But then they decided to stay that week in Colorado Springs. They were already, there in place. They felt like it would be too much of a disruption to go back to Los Angeles. And on top of that, there were 100 players, coaches, staff members for the Rams who had been evacuated from their homes because of the fires. Wow. A lot of those guys weren't allowed to go back into their homes by last week. Hopefully, everyone's back in their place by now. But to go back to Los Angeles, where a lot of players didn't have a place to go, their homes weren't open, so they decided, let's just go ahead and stay here in Colorado Springs, which is what they did. But we weren't quite in Mexico City yet. Close, but weren't there yet. But still, it was a lot of disruption, a lot of confusion, and I thought both teams handled it really well.
No, they did, and they certainly performed on the field. We're speaking to Vinny Bonsignore from the Athletic Los Angeles. Now, Vinny, in that game, we saw two quarterbacks put up, just amazing performances, and it leads us to a discussion around the Raiders quarterback situation that continues to be kind of an undercurrent. Derek Carr putting up good numbers. Now, if you look at it overall from his career and what he's been able to do, and that's a pure statistical look, doesn't have anything to do with the results on the field as far as the team winning and what tools he has or doesn't have. But when you look at the Derek Carr situation, are you seeing any telltale signs? I know it's only week 11, but we continue to feel and hear from folks that Derek Carr isn't necessarily solidified in that role no matter what Jon Gruden says publicly. He's got to say that publicly, right? That's not, a coach isn't going to come out and say, I got doubts. But are you seeing any telltale signs? Do you see anything? I mean, you've been through the situation with Jared Goff developing, and you've seen this happen throughout the league. Where do you think this stands? And if you were going to guess at the end of this year, I know it's hard to guess because we don't know what's going on in the minds of an individual, but where do you think this goes for Derek Carr and the Raiders?
It's a fascinating question. It's not just a great question, but it really is a fascinating question because he has played better. He's put up good numbers this year. There's been some spotty performances. There were some struggles early on. He's gotten better as the year has gone on. But is it enough to say, okay, that's our guy for the future? And there's two ways of looking at it. You can say, first of all, I do expect them to draft a quarterback at some point in the draft. Where that is, that'll be the key to the whole thing. Like if he's really the answer, or if he's not the answer. If they draft a guy, with one of their first picks, then obviously they feel like that guy is the future. And now, what do you do with Derek Carr? But that aside, does it become an issue of, look, we feel like he can be our quarterback of the future. Now it's just our job to get him the help that he needs on the offensive line, at running back, a better defense, and just build that way and build around him. I'm not so sure that he hasn't shown that he can still be that guy. But then you don't want to get kind of suckered into something like that or cornered into something like that by putting a little bit too much credence into him playing, moderately, just a little bit better than he was earlier in the season. So I don't know yet, and I don't think the Raiders quite know yet. And they're going to have to take a deep look at things at the end of the season to decide, because it is a pivotal decision. Do we go early on with a quarterback and say that's our future, or do we give Derek Carr a little bit more time and build around him with these first-round picks and all these assets that we have? I don't think there's any decision been made yet, but that will be one of the more fascinating ones as we head into the offseason.
I think the fact that they have these extra draft picks in the first round gives them that flexibility to be able to go after a guy. But like you mentioned, you have to really be cautious of how you affect Derek Carr's psyche. If he feels like he's not the guy anymore, or that his job is in jeopardy, how will that affect his on-the-field play? My biggest issue with Carr has been his, unwillingness I don't know if it's ability or not, but unwillingness to really move the ball down the field. His completion percentage is 70%, but his yards are. I mean, he didn't even throw for 200 yards the other day in a win against Arizona. You have to wonder if he's the right fit for this kind of system.
Yeah, and if you look at the Saints, if you look at the Rams, if you look at the Chiefs, all three quarterbacks obviously are completing at a high percentage, but they're also taking chances down the field. They're also pushing the ball down the field, and if Carr is either, for whatever reason, unwilling to do that or unable to do that, that takes a huge part out of what you can do offensively, and we're seeing it more and more. The ability to stretch the field, and we're not talking about the 70-yard bombs all the time, the old Raider way, but getting the ball down the field 30, 40 yards down the field in chunks like that, which is what the Rams and the Saints and the Chiefs have been doing.
Vinny,
it's critical.
Yeah, but Vinny, thanks, man. I appreciate it. We're out of time now. We'll talk to you next week. You've been listening to Silver and Black Today, CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
Sports Radio. This portion of Silver and Black Today is powered by the law office of Michael Troiano.
Hey, this is Tim Brown, Hall of Famer. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
I love when Tim Brown brings us back in, especially when I'm wearing my Notre Dame jersey. Hey, USC fans.
God. Dude, USC's terrible this year, man. They barely beat UNLV. Let's not start beating our chest yet.
No.
Hey, going out in the first round anyways.
12-0.
Knock it off.
12-0. 12-0. Everybody's they didn't beat USC that much. Dude, it's a rivalry game. All rivalry games are close. You look at Arizona State, another one of my teams won yesterday.
How many teams do you have, Scott?
Arizona State and Notre Dame.
And
Arizona State because of my daughter.
What about UNLV?
Screw UNLV.
Come on, they won the Cannon, man.
I don't care.
I know.
I was rooting for them to lose.
Did you see what I said last night?
No, what did you say?
Look, I'm as happy as anybody that UNLV won because
you're still a fan. I'm not.
Well, I mean, I'm a Vegas guy, right?
I get it.
But I said that win just set UNLV's football program back 5 years
because now they have to keep them.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, and that
I don't think it's a good thing in the long run.
Well, and I'm sure Daddy Station's Casino has a lot to say about that, which is an unfortunate part as well. But I will say this, that Tim Brown, Notre Dame, great receiver. And we're going to talk to Mervyn Fernandez later.
One of my favorites.
By the way, Swervin Mervyn, who played with Tim Brown when Tim Brown got drafted with the Raiders, and he was obviously thought very highly of him, and Tim Brown was one of the reasons that Mervyn actually ended up leaving the Raiders at the end of his career with the Raiders. Not negative at all. It just was Tim Brown's turn to be the number one receiver. So we'll talk to him later. Make sure you catch that next hour, quarter hour, Swervin Mervyn Fernandez. All right, so what we did on the website, Matt, this week, because it's been such a tough season, it was Thanksgiving, right? So I sat down to write. I'm like, what am I going to write? It's a slow time for news. It's a slow time for Raider news because they're not playing over the holiday, and we need some good news. So I was like, okay, what is good coming out of a bad 2018 year? And I came up with 3 things that Raider Nation should be thankful for. Again, this is 3 things that Raider Nation should be thankful for as we come off the Thanksgiving weekend about this team, about this organization. The first thing I had, okay, and there's a caveat here, which I'll make in a moment, Matt, and that is sustained stability. Okay, the Raiders have not had stability in the front office at the coaching position in a long time. Now they have a 10-year guy. Seemingly, okay. Whether he makes it 10 years or not, it's a different story. The reality is they have committed to Jon Gruden. They are letting Jon Gruden make the decisions. They are allowing him to drive the bus, okay? Now, you might not like Jon Gruden or believe in the fact that he can do what they're asking him to do. That's a separate story. But, Matt, you have to, as a longtime Raider fan yourself, you have to believe that, boy, this is good to have finally stability. Whether it works or not, we'll see. But the reality is, for the first time, they know who's going to be there 2, 5, 8 years from now.
Before before Jack Del Rio got his 3 full years as head coach, the last head coach to have 3 full years with the Raiders was Jon Gruden in his first tenure with 4 years.
Amazing.
And before that, it was Art Shell.
Yep.
They've had nothing but turnover at the coaching position for the last 30 years now. I mean, that's what this organization has been. Jack Del Rio, he had those 3 years. He had the one good year. You saw what stability could do in this organization. You saw what Carr could do with a second year in a system. You need to have stability to have success. You can catch lightning in a bottle. I mean, that does happen. Guys come in, they have one great year. Everything seems to break their way, and then it falls apart afterwards, and you think, what happened to that 1 year? You get rid of a guy after 2 or 3 seasons, that's what happened to that 1 year. You had to start all over. The Raiders need this. They're coming to Vegas. I mean, that's huge because you need to win when you get here. You have to build something to get fans engaged in a new market. And if that means tearing it down, which none of us want to see, no Raider fan out there wants to see it. You don't want to see your team lose, but they need to have some form of stability. That means starting fresh, getting in your guys, and building for the long term. Hopefully that long term is 10 years. I'd love to see Jon Gruden here for 10 years. They need that as an organization. They need to have a guy. I mean, look at the success that Belichick has had in New England.
Because he's had time.
Quarterback, head coach for an extended period of time. That's what works.
Well, and we're going to have discussions around some of the particulars there in future shows and perhaps even later when we talk about some of the draft picks. But to me, yes, there has to be stability. Now, if you don't think Gruden's the guy to begin with and you don't think he's going to be a good GM, I get that. But the reality is he's going to be there for a long time, and I don't think that's a bad thing unless he completely underperforms, and that's a separate story. Now, what I will say, too, is another one of our 3 things to be thankful for to be a Raiders fan in 2018. And that, of course, is about 2020. And that is, of course, the new Las Vegas Stadium. Now, people look at it and say, well, okay, great, they have a new stadium. It's beautiful. It's in Las Vegas. Of course, some people in Oakland don't like that. But nonetheless, for the first time in the team's history, they will have their own facility. Yes, they share it with UNLV, but UNLV is really an afterthought with that stadium.
Right.
So they're going to have their own stadium, which the most important thing with that is not just the fact that they get their own stadium, but it is also, Matt's going to show you.
Let's see if you can get a shot of us here.
Now you got a message coming through.
This was yesterday. And get that out of here. It's fantasy football.
It's fantasy football.
Fantasy football.
But Matt's showing it on the stream.
That I took that yesterday.
Yeah.
So you can see
the steel structure.
Exactly what's going on with that. I mean, it's coming to form. This is an NFL stadium being built right off the I-15 across from the Strip that's going to house the Raiders. Right. The Raiders are going, like you said, their own facility. I don't care if they're sharing with UNLV. It's not even going to be the same playing surface. No. This is going to be a silver and black stadium built specifically for the Raiders. That's something they have never had in their entire franchise's history.
No, and most important, we had Tommy White on the show last week to give us an update, Matt, because there was some talk while you were gone that there was an iron workers shortage, which we dispelled very quickly because that thing is, I mean, look how much it progress since you were gone.
Every day
since you were gone, right? You came back, you're like, whoa. It was crazy,
great, man.
But the thing is, the most important thing with the stadium, okay, it's beautiful for fans. It's a great place to play. It's a great venue for the NFL. But it's the revenue, stupid. Okay, so the revenue that is going to be derived from a new stadium that the Raiders control is the game changer. So that is number 2. And I don't think you can underscore how important that is. And if you're a true fan of Raider Nation, I always say if you were done with them after they left Oakland, I understand that. Okay, most Raider fans are not that way, but if that's your case, I understand. I gave up on the Chargers as a lifelong Charger fan 4 years ago because I knew they were leaving, and to me it was a San Diego thing. Mm-hmm. And so, okay, fine. You can call me whatever you want. I don't care. But nonetheless, with the Raider fans aren't that way. It seems Raider fans will go. If they played in freaking Pakistan, I think their Raider fans would be there and would be actively excited about that.
Well, the last time they left Oakland, their fan base grew.
Yeah,
Raider Nation became Raider Nation when they moved to Los Angeles. Not that
you're
they
going to get hate mail now.
That's fine. Hey, don't at me, bro. Yeah. But, I mean, they have that passionate fan base, and I always talk about to people that don't understand the difference between Oakland and L.A. The Oakland fan base is old school football fans. Yeah, there's some crazy Raider fans out there, and the black hole is amazing, and all of the costumes and everything that comes with it. But those are diehard football fans, and the Raiders are their team. The LA fan base is very different in that it jumped onto this mystique that the Raiders had and the colors that the Raiders had, and it just kind of took on a life of its own from there. And you throw in, Ice Cube and NWA and all of that and the pop culture that jumped along with it.
Yeah.
And it grew from being just this great, cool football team, great old fan base to something that took on a life of its own, and now that's what it is. And if you think they're not going to come here and grow that fan base again, you're crazy.
No, that's absolutely true. So, I mean, the stadium, you should feel good about that. If you haven't, I know a lot of Raider fans, we have a huge amount of listeners outside the market of Las Vegas. They listen to us on radio.com, they watch us on YouTube, Facebook, and so on. And a lot of them are in Los Angeles, the Bay Area, throughout California, the Southwest, and they come to Las Vegas because you see them tweet, "Oh, I'm by the stadium." Yeah. So people are even coming to see it built.
It's a cool sight, man. If you haven't seen it yet, it is a cool sight. There's a live webcam on Mandalay Bay that you can find on the Raiders site that's just constantly watching that progress. It's a cool thing to see that thing go up.
And we're going to get down there and do some videos, hopefully very soon, with the weather being better now and not 118 degrees. So lastly, of the three, again, number one was stability under Jon Gruden and the fact that he's going to be there for a long time. Number two was the stadium. And the third reason why Raider Nation should feel thankful this holiday season and this Thanksgiving weekend is for, guess what? Raider Nation, for each other. Because I'll tell you what, you're wearing your Raider Nation t-shirt, see?
Yeah, there you go.
Look at that. Foreshadowing.
It's almost like I knew what we were going to talk about.
Oh, my God. No way. How did you guess? But nonetheless, Matt, I think that's the thing. And for me, not growing up a Raiders fan and coming into it from a different perspective, there's the misconceptions about Raiders fans about how, it's either a criminal base or they're like hooligans at soccer in England. Not true. The other thing, though, is that surprised me, and some guys that I know who've connected, like Jim Jacks, we've had on the show up in Northern California. Mm-hmm. He connects a lot of people. The amount of charity work and stuff that is done between Raider Nation and the loyalty amongst each other is remarkable.
Yeah, and I just talked about the football fans that you get in Oakland and the bad rap that they get. And honestly, I've been to a lot of stadiums. There are bad fans in every single group.
Of course.
Raider fans are phenomenal football fans. Go to Oakland and wear your team's jersey. Don't taunt anybody, because that's just stupid on any level, in any fan base. Don't taunt anybody, but go up there and enjoy a game, because it's a great environment to watch football in, and it's because those fans are so amazing.
All right, we're going to step aside. When we come back, we're going to review the Raiders' 2018 draft picks and progress. You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. 40.
This is Silver and Black today, live on CBS Sports Radio, 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Raiders, we're getting closer to the kickoff in Baltimore, just over an hour from now, as the Raiders head out to the East Coast to try to earn their third win of the season. Again, you're listening to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140. I am Scott Gulbranson. My co-host Matt Gutierrez is here, back from vacation, and we're glad to have him back. So much to talk about. Okay, Matt, so let's jump into this now. We're going to talk now about the Raiders draft from this past year, the 2018 draft. It was somewhat controversial for who they picked and when they picked, not necessarily for the positions picked, but the players picked and who was available at the time. One of my favorite guys, Derwin James, who's now haunting them with the Chargers, was a guy I liked up in the first round. But at the same time, they went with some guys. We're going to run down some of these, Matt, and talk about some of the players because it's been a mixed bag. But I think overall, a pretty good draft for the Raiders thus far. Early look. But I want to start with what I think, which is the number one guy that we all knew was a quote-unquote steal, who would do well in the NFL, whose draft stock fell due to a health issue, and that, of course, is Maurice Hurst. Maurice Hurst leads all rookie defensive tackles with 4 sacks. He's now tied the record of Khalil Mack for rookies on the Raiders with sacks with 4. You got to think he's going to break that. 26 stops on the year. He's on a pace again to break that record of Mack. Great game last week. He's had his spots where he didn't look so good, but overall, he has not much help up front. We'll talk about P.J. Hall later, but you have to be happy so far with not only drafting him where you got him, Matt, but also the performance on the field in what has been a bad year.
Scott, I'll never forget that draft day when we were at Nellis Air Force Base, and they were doing the picks in the later rounds from Nellis, and we were kind of out of touch with a few of the rounds of the draft because we were dealing with all that and the setup, and we're going on a military base. There's some security protocol involved. And the pick came in for the Raiders, and we heard Mo Hurst, and I just looked at you and went, "We got Mo Hurst?" Like, I couldn't believe he was still on the board at that point. And we knew right away that was going to be steal of the draft, especially for the Raiders. But just in general, that is a phenomenal pick to be able to get a guy like that who grades out as a first-round talent that far down in the draft.
Well, and he's proven his worth thus far, as I said. Now, when I say that he's going to break Khalil Mack's record, he's not the same player as Khalil Mack. We're not saying that, but numbers are numbers. Mm-hmm. Okay, Khalil Mack in his first year had 4 sacks. Maurice Hurst already has 4 sacks. Some people will say, well, geez, he had one last week against the Cardinals and they suck. Doesn't matter. He's a rookie. He's doing really well, so you got to be happy with him. Now, so Maurice Hurst, I think everybody can agree, great draft pick. He's going to turn into a fantastic player who will play, barring injury, with the Raiders for years to come and is something to build around in the defensive front. Now, let's talk about the other guy that they drafted also on that defensive front, and that, of course, was a longer shot. And that is P.J. Hall, who they took in the second round. This was controversial because of where he went, right? So he goes in the second. Remember, he was drafted before Maurice Hurst. Go figure. So now P.J. Hall, Matt, I think has shown some really bright moments. According to Pro Football Focus, last week, 3 pressures, 2 run stops, 31 snaps. And again, he has been in spots very good. In other spots, not so good. He gets lost.
Inconsistent. I think that's the best way to describe him. I think P.J. Hall is a fantastic football player. He understands the game. He knows when he's not going to get there to get his hands up in passing lanes. He's a smart, heady football player. But I don't know if physically he can play at a consistent enough level in the NFL to be an impact player. Maybe you can find a way to move him around and use him in spots because he is such a smart football player. But he's a smaller guy. He comes from a smaller school and a small conference, and that doesn't always translate on the NFL level. I hope it does because I like this kid's motor. I like what he does out there, but we have to see it more consistently from him.
Well, and I think, too, that despite his size, he is actually at times, he's a really strong dude.
Yeah.
And he has shown that inside. I think you're right. It's all about consistency, which in the NFL, if you're going to be a very good player, you have to have consistency. I think he can get there. I always knew, I think you and I agreed on this early on, that it was going to take time for him to develop, as some of the other picks we're going to talk about too. So for P.J. Hall to play like he has this year, the way he's played, I think he's on track.
Yeah.
I don't think, again, if he had 2 other guys up front there that he was rotating with on different downs and had an opportunity to play in certain situations more often,
yeah, they need
he'd
depth.
be better.
They need some depth there.
They need
for
depth there. So I like that. Now, the next guy I want to talk about, we'll stay on the defense. This is in no particular order, by the way. Arden Key, a guy you were really excited about, Matt. A guy I'm still excited about. We look at him, 3rd rounder. He's an edge rusher. When they traded Mack, they said, boy, we got to get something out of him because we need help. That has not worked, although I will tell you, 15 tackles, 1 sack. He's hit the quarterback 6 times, 9 hurries in 8 games. He's had just 2 starts, okay? But he's playing mostly on early downs, and he did that especially early in the year. And so to me, his progress, if you look at it in terms of 1st and 2nd down, great. 3rd down, pass rush, no, okay? So I think Arden Key is there, and I think they look at him as someone over 2 or 3 years can be an impactful guy.
Arden Key needs to come into camp next season about 15 pounds heavier. He needs to get stronger. I think that's where he's lacking. He's missing tackles. He's getting guys wrapped up and not able to bring them down. You saw the big one against Arizona the other day.
Yeah.
He needs to get stronger. Physically, you see the frame on him. And I'm pretty confident that we mentioned this earlier in the year that he's got a big frame. He just needs to get
lanky,
stronger. Yeah. I mean, you look at Khalil Mack if you want to compare sizes. Khalil Mack looks like a bodybuilder. I mean, he is just a beast of a man that if he gets a hand on you, you're not going anywhere. You're going to the ground. Arden Key doesn't have that yet, but he's got the frame to build on that. Over the next couple of seasons, we need to see him get stronger. I think you're going to see him be an impact player.
No, I do too. And I think also, Matt, if you look at it from this perspective, and that is he is a guy, that had issues coming out of college. So it wasn't like I mean, he lost some draft stock because of the off-the-field issues. He's kept clean, knock on wood, this year. He's had no issues off the field. We've heard no grumblings out of the locker room about him being any kind of issue. He looks like he's a guy there to learn to become a professional, and so you got to like that.
Yeah, I don't think they missed on Arden Key. I just think he's a little more of a work in progress.
A project, yeah, no doubt about it. Okay, now if we look at the next guy, let's move to the offensive line because those are some of the controversial picks. Colton Miller, their first overall pick in the draft, and that was there. Oh, we're off for a break. God,
we're gonna have to hit the offensive line. Yes. I think in a minute.
We're gonna come back
because they're gonna cut you off here in about 30 seconds.
That's right. We got a hard.
Not gonna be able to do anything about it, Scott.
I know. I'm telling you what, dude. I've regressed on keeping track of the clock. It's the weirdest thing. I don't know it's my advancing years. Anyway, when we come back, we're going to continue the conversation. Go through Colton Miller. Go through Brandon Parker, Marcel Aitman, and we'll talk a little bit about Derek Carr. That's always a subject we talk about. So anyway, you're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio in Las Vegas. Later on in the show, Swervin Mervyn Fernandez comes on. So don't go away. We'll be right back after this.
Morning from 8 to 10 on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson and Matt Gutierrez.
Welcome back. Silver and Black today, Las Vegas's only all Raiders talk show. We are talking the Silver and Black all the time, every Sunday here. And you can catch us on the website, too, silverandblacktoday.com. And the podcast, you'll find us online. Just search. It will be there for you. All right. Quickly again, this hour we're going to have next segment. You don't want to miss it. Swervin Mervyn Fernandez. A fan favorite of the Raiders, also ranks up there with the Raiders in ranking from a wide receiver perspective. I think people will be surprised by where he ranks overall from a catch perspective and yards per catch especially. Mervyn was a guy who, when he caught the ball, he went for great distances. So it's going to be fun to have him on a little bit later. What we did before we left for the break, we were talking and reviewing the Raiders draft class. We left off ready to talk about the offensive line, Matt. And let's talk about that. Colton Miller, of course, going in the first round, the Raiders' first-round draft pick last year. Colton Miller has been injured most of the year with a knee sprain, and you've had several knee issues, so you know what that's like. And I think Colton Miller, not only has he shown the grit, and he has been beaten badly in some games, and in other games he's done really, really well. And if you look at his numbers overall, he fares pretty well, depending on the game. So to me, Colton Miller, the jury's still out a little bit. I think if I had to place a bet today, Matt, I would say Colton Miller is going to be a very solid left tackle over the course of the next 5 or 6 years. Does that mean he's going to be the best or all-pro or Pro Bowl? I don't know yet. But being thrown into the crappy situation that he's been thrown into, I think he's done overall pretty well. If I was going to give him a letter grade, I'd probably give him a B-, an A for effort.
Well, here's the thing: is every left tackle in the NFL a first-round overall pick, Pro Bowl type player? I mean, you can't expect that from every single left tackle out there. You want your left tackle to be one of the best guys on that offensive line, if not the best. They drafted him in the first round. I think he's going to end up playing like a first-round draft pick. That doesn't mean you're a Hall of Famer.
Correct.
But if you're productive throughout your career, I think you're in good shape. Our biggest problem with that pick, mine especially, was where they picked him. And the fact that I didn't like that they went after an offensive lineman right there, because from the outside in, it didn't look like that was their biggest need. Now, in hindsight, clearly it was a huge need because that line is so banged up. But in all honesty, they had so many holes. I don't think it mattered who they took there. Honestly,
it's true.
I mean,
it's true.
I'm not trying to. It's not a shot. I'm not trying to take a shot at the Raiders or the organization, but they just had so many holes on this team, it wouldn't have mattered if they had gone after a safety and found their safety for the future. If they had gone after a corner, found their corner of the future, or linebacker, or offensive lineman. They needed to find one of those positions to solidify it for the future. And I think they've done that with Colton Miller.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And to me, you're right. He's going to be a good player. I have all the faith in the world that he will develop into that and be fine. Now, on the other side of the line, another draft pick that we all felt, even though I really like the kid, he's a smart, good young man, was Brandon Parker. On the right side, they drafted in the 3rd round. Now, Brandon Parker has had a lot more trouble. He's had some injuries, but he's had a lot more trouble at the right side. He's been up and down, and if you look at where he's at, I mean, statistically, and I'm going off of where we're looking at, on Pro Football Focus. But he had, against San Francisco, for example, one of the worst games I've seen, I think, a right tackle have in my life. He was beat almost every single play, created all kinds of havoc. Cardinals game, he came back and did really well, especially from a pass blocking perspective. He actually did really, really well. So I think it's up and down. I think this is a guy who's going to be borderline. Can he be a long-term starter? That will be the question, and I don't think we'll know that answer, Matt, until they get some depth on that line and he has somebody challenging him.
I think Brandon Parker has shown improvement throughout his time this season. I think you see him getting more acclimated, kind of figuring things out. You mentioned the horrible San Francisco game, but he does come back and have a good game after that, which shows that he's figuring things out and he's learning, he's getting better. That was one of those picks that we thought 2 or 3 years. But because of injuries, because of the way the season has played out, he had to be thrown in there right away. It is a trial by fire kind of thing, and you're going to see those growing pains. Unfortunately, you have to see them on the field in his rookie season as opposed to in practice and in preseason and, kind of getting his feet wet. So it's going to look it's going to look worse on the surface than it actually is. But I think Parker can be a solid right tackle on this team. Again, how good is he going to be? Is he going to be a guy that is the incumbent starter for the next 10 years? We don't know yet. We don't have a big enough sample size. He is a project kind of guy, but he's shown ability to play at this level. He just needs to get better.
He needs to get better, absolutely, and hopefully he'll have the chance. So plenty of playing time going down the stretch here. Okay, another 2 guys we'll finish up with here. One is a guy we'll spend little time on just because I think he's borderline, and that is Nick Nelson at quarterback. He was injured. He came in. I had high hopes for him. In the time that he has played, which hasn't been very much, he hasn't done much, and actually he's gotten beat. He's had a couple nice, I would say, plays and a couple nice drives where he played well in coverage, but overall his coverage numbers are not great. And so I think he's just a borderline guy. When you start to draft more defensive backs and bring in more free agents, if he comes up to the competition and learns and does well the rest of the season, maybe my mind will change. But I don't see Nick Nelson being somebody who's going to work out long term.
I just don't know yet. Honestly, I don't know what you're going to get out of Nick Nelson. We haven't seen enough. We really haven't seen much of anything yet. And how much of that is predicated on the injury? I mean, he's coming off of I believe it was a meniscus tear, right?
Yep.
Which, again, you talked about my knee. I currently have one. We know how that goes. He's got to physically get right while at the same time learning a playbook. That's not always the easiest thing when you're playing against the best in the world, which is what you have in the NFL. So I don't think there's any way to really be able to grade Nick Nelson on this season, at least not yet. Maybe in the last 6 games.
Yeah.
You get to see more out of him. Maybe he is getting closer to 100% if he's not already 100%, and you get to see him actually on the field making plays or not making plays if that's what you're going to get out of him. But we just need to see something from him. You haven't seen anything yet.
Exactly.
It's a lot like Gary Connolly last year where, he was in for 5 minutes and we saw something. Maybe he's going to be good, but you just don't have anything yet.
No, I agree with you, Matt. And so hopefully, and this is where I want to see guys play, right? I mean, you have veterans there, but let's face it, some of those veterans are not their bodies right now because you're not deep. But I want to see them play these young guys as much. You have to see what you have. Yeah. And Nick Nelson's a perfect example. Do you have a player that is long-term part of your plans?
I want to see Carl Joseph. I want to see Nick Nelson. I want to see Gary Connolly. I want to see these guys out there. What's the worst that can happen? You lose another game? That's the name of this season.
No,
I mean, that's
right.
Who cares? Just let these guys get out there and play. And if they're not going to work out, then at least you know that. It's better than not knowing and sitting on the bench and going, well, they could maybe get better one day. Just let them play.
Absolutely. Okay, so now the last guy we'll talk about is, of course, the hero from last week, and that is wide receiver Marcell Ateman, drafted 228th overall in the 7th round. We talked about him earlier, and he's a big kid, 6'4", 216. So far, 4 receptions, 50 yards, 5 targets in 1 game. Of course, he had 65 offensive snaps. But what a first impression, Matt. One of those kind of hero guys, bubbles up, has those 2 big catches. But here's a guy, even from the practice reports we hear, has dazzled, but has lacked consistency. I think you got to, when Bryant comes back, when Jordy Nelson comes back, which apparently will be today,
yep.
They need to get Marcell Ateman as many snaps as they did last week.
Yeah, get him in the game with these veterans. Bryant and Nelson are veterans. Let him get out there and play with these guys because, first of all, take focus off the rookie, right?
No doubt.
He should not be out there being the man. He's a 7th-round pick. You just mentioned, 228, right?
Yeah.
He should not be the focus of any offense right now, but get him involved in the offense.
See what you got.
Allow guys like Jordy Nelson and Martavis Bryant to stretch the field a little bit and use this kid's size. Let him be a chain mover right now. Let him get used to getting out there, catching passes against these NFL DBs, finding the open spots in these zones. Let him get acclimated to playing in this system because I think he can be a weapon for you. He's a big guy, 6'4", red zone target. You need that.
Yes.
You've got Jared Cook already out there doing it.
But they double him
Bring
up.
somebody else in. Exactly.
Right. And not only that, Matt, but I think with Ateman, one of the issues that we have he has very sure hands.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's a good thing, obviously.
Chain mover, man.
That's right. That's a great thing. But what they need to see from him that I don't know that we have yet because he just so limited sample size is even against the Cardinals, he was matched up against some smaller guys. Against the big physical defensive backs in the league, I want to see how he does. Okay, so today even he'll have a chance to do that against Baltimore and going down the line against Kansas City, even who's not very good, but they have some guys with size. I want to see how he does when he faces different types of defenders in different types of situations.
That's where his route running ability will come into play. Your ability to get open against those big guys who can match you physically is about your positioning. You only need a little bit of separation in the NFL if you have a good quarterback who's going to put the ball in there where you need to be. If his route running is crisp enough and he can get that little bit of separation, he's got the body size, even against these big DBs, to basically post them up, a lot like you see some of the great tight ends do.
Oh, yeah.
Just get that position going. Let your quarterback throw you open, and you're going to be fine. And I think he's got the frame to do that.
He does. No, it's going to be fun. And I want to see him have a good game today. Back up last week with another good one this week. All right, we're going to step aside and pay some bills. And when we come back, I'm excited about this one. We are going to be speaking with former Raider great wide receiver Swervin Mervyn Fernandez. That's right, number 86 will join us live here on the Silver and Black today. Coming to you from the Dollar Loan Center, don'tbebroke.com studios at CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Callers and guests on the Newsmaker line are brought to you by the law office of Michael A. Troiano.
This is Cliff Branch, formerly of the Oakland Raiders, 3-time Super Bowl champ, 4-time Pro Bowl, and you listen to the Silver and Black Show.
All right, Cliff Branch, one of the great Raider legends at wide receiver, a man who should be in the Hall of Fame along with Tom Flores, and a player who played at least 1 year with Tom Flores and is also littered all over the record book for the Raiders, and we'll talk to him about that here in a second. And we're really happy to be joined now on the Attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line by my favorite nickname of all time, Swervin Mervyn Fernandez, wide receiver with the Raiders from 87 to 92. Mervyn, thanks for joining us here this morning on Silver and Black today.
Good morning, gentlemen. How you doing?
We're doing great.
We're doing good. Obviously, Raider Nation has had a mixed bag this year with the record, Mervyn. But let's start talking first about your career. with the Silver and Black because you had just amazing time. You come into the league. You first came out of San Jose State and how you got there. I wish we had time to talk about your whole journey because it's fascinating. But you go to San Jose State, and I'm sure you know who Lawrence Fan is, right?
Yeah.
Lawrence,
he's still there.
He's still there, man. And when I worked at UNLV, Lawrence used to bake all the time, right? And he was phenomenal. Yeah. But what a great guy. But anyway, San Jose State, you go play in Canada, and then in 1987, because the Raiders had drafted and Al Davis had drafted your rights, I think in the 10th round.
Right, that's correct.
You joined the Raiders for Tom Flores' last year in 1987. And then Art Shell gets the job, Mike Shanahan came in, and then you were there through some great years, including the 1990 year. But talk about getting to the Raiders, that journey, and what it meant to you when you finally got there and you were inside the Silver and Black as an organization.
Well, it was pretty amazing that I was still in Canada and I still had 3 or 4 years on my contract, and that they wanted me that bad that they would draft me and use a draft pick. You know, back then the draft was a few more rounds, and even in the 10th round, it's still a draft pick. So they used that just to hold my rights and get me there. And then once I got there, it was a little bit of adjustment as far as being stationary on the line and that kind of stuff. And also when I got there, they still had some of the greats. They were at the end of their careers, but Lester Hayes and Mike Haynes and those Mike Davis and Rod Martin were still on the defense. So when I walked out on the field, they're like, "Who's this Canadian guy?" Well, hey man, first of all, I'm not Canadian, okay? I'm an American. Went to the state, grew up in the States, and then football takes over, and you just start doing what you know.
What was it like to playing in the Bay Area in college, and then to finally put on the Silver and Black, albeit in L.A.? It's still the Raiders, and I'm sure you were familiar with what that entailed. To go out there and finally get to the NFL, but to wear that Silver and Black, was it everything you had hoped it would be?
It was pretty surreal. I mean, just walking out on that field and being in an NFL and then walking out there in a Raider uniform and, being from the Bay Area, being from grade school to high school to junior college to college to the Raiders is that was a dream come true for me. I was home all the way through, and not too many guys get that opportunity to stay where their roots are and, do all that stuff. And, it was great.
Well, and Mervyn, when you get there, you have some guys that you're playing with, and through the course of your Raider career, you get there, you have James Lofton there, right? And then you played with Willie Gault, and then you have the young buck Tim Brown comes in out of Notre Dame. Right. And so you played with a lot of different guys. Talk about what that was like for you, the kind of mix and the chemistry you had on those teams, especially at the wide receiver position.
It was a lot of fun. We were a tight group. We had a lot of, different games and things that it would keep it interesting out on the field. Like if you drop the ball, you'd have to do 25 push-ups. If you dropped a touchdown, we had bankers. We had, all these different things. And we were just a really tight group. And then just to be out there and watch the guys do their things. I mean, so James Lofton's obviously in the Hall of Fame. Willie probably should be in there. Timmy's in there. And, then on the other side, I got Marcus in the backfield. I got Bo in the backfield. Eric Dickerson came through. Bell came through. And then on the other side, I'm sitting here right now watching the Fox News and Howie's on TV. I mean, it was just...
That's crazy.
At the time, it wasn't like, oh, my God, this is Howie, this is Bo. They were just my teammates. But now it's like, wow, I really did play with some great players. But, it was just doing my job at that time.
Remember, we have some phenomenal fans that seem to know everything there is to know about the Raiders and their history. And one of our fans wanted me to ask you about the time that Art Shell put you on blast for eating peanuts on the sideline. I'm not familiar with this story. What is this story?
Really? We're going to go there right now? That is a true story. So, winding down my career with the Raiders, I am just probably one of the last games of the season, if not the last game. It's probably about late in the fourth quarter. Me and Todd Marinovich been sitting on the bench the whole time, not even getting a sniff in the game. And, we're just sitting there kind of goofing off, and, game's almost over. We're eating peanuts or whatever. And I don't know if it was Art Shell or Terry Robisky looked back, and I think they were going to put me in the game, and I was eating peanuts, and so my understanding is they took that as I wasn't ready to play.
Oh, man.
I was eating peanuts. Yeah. Like you don't see people eating peanuts and sunflower seeds on the field in today's game. But anyways, I'm not even going to go there.
Well, we did see Mark Sanchez eating a hot dog on the sideline in Oakland.
My last check from the Raiders, and I look on there, and it's missing $5,000. So I call up to the Raiders, and they give me Art, and I asked Art, what's the $5 for? You know what it's for? I was like, I really don't. What is it for? Eating peanuts on the sideline.
Oh, no way.
You find me $5,000.
Wow.
Peanuts on the sidelines, and true story.
That's it.
No love lost. I mean, it is what it is.
Sure, and I know how active you are with the Raider alumni, and you do a lot of golf tournaments.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about all those great players that you played with, Mervyn, but you yourself had a stellar career with the Raiders. I mean, you rank still 4th in yards per catch with 18 yards per catch, which is astounding. 9th in overall receiving, 17th in receptions. And playing during that time with who you played with and your own individual performance, and then you finished up going back to the CFL. How did that CFL period prepare you for the NFL so that when you walked in, you could achieve the success that you did with the Raiders?
Well, I think it's just being active and staying, relevant. Running routes, catching balls. We had great success in the CFL and a lot of touchdowns, running a lot of different routes, and that just kept me prepared for the next level. And like I said earlier, once you get in that situation, the football just seems to take over, and your ability takes over. And obviously, they had different players and different quarterbacks, but football is still football, no matter which team you go to. And you just try to play to your strengths and do the best you can. And luckily, I had some success with it. And the rest is history. The rest is history, folks, because it seems like it's been a long time since I've been on that field. But,
Well, and again, we're talking to Mervyn Fernandez, of course, from the Raiders, 87-92. Now, Mervyn, we have a couple minutes left with you, and then we'll let you back to your Sunday. But a question I want to ask you is this year with the Raiders, you had just 1 year, really, with the Raiders where you guys had, I would say, a subpar record, if you want to call it that. Nothing is as dire as it's been for the Raiders this year. But you did go through coaching changes. Talk about what it's like for a roster to go through the change that they've seen this year in Oakland under Jon Gruden.
Well, I'm sure for the guys it's pretty frustrating, and it's difficult, when a new coach comes in because he wants to bring his new people in, and they pretty much change most of the plays to what they want, and the vibe is different, and when new coaches come in, players go out, coaches go out, and you have to get back in the sync when you're able to be with the coach for a while, and you got that program down like the back of your hand. You don't even think about it. I think it just your production is better when you're in a comfortable position. I'll give a short example of Alex Smith at the 49ers. What a great quarterback he is, and he's done some great things over the years, even with the Niners. But every year, that man had a new playbook.
Yeah.
And for a quarterback,
that's tough.
I need to learn my plays and a couple other things, but I don't actually have to know everybody's position and where everybody's going to be in this read and that read. And, I have my stuff to do. But could you imagine you you getting a new script how you do your job every single year. And meanwhile, it's all being videotaped.
Oh, I know. Well, Mervyn, listen, man, we ran out of time. I'll have you on again because there is a lot more we want to talk to you about, but we certainly appreciate you taking time out of your Sunday.
Thank you. And anytime you call me, I'll be there.
All right. Thanks Mervyn. Again, Swervin Mervyn Fernandez, great Raiders wide receiver, will be back here on Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
Help us talk the Silver and Black. Call us at 702-889-5978. Here's Matt Gutierrez and your host, Scott Gulbranson, on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
Welcome back, Raider Nation. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving weekend. We are in the home stretch here of the show as we lead up to the kickoff between the Raiders and the Ravens. This segment, every show, right after the bottom of the hour of hour number 2, is when we call an audible, of course, and we get Matt Gutierrez here, my co-host, and he does a segment where he picks a subject at random, and we debate it, talk about it, whatever we need to do about it. So I'm going to turn it over to him. Matt, what do we got today, brother?
We got Baby Shark, man.
Baby Shark? What does that mean?
Freaking Shark. You've heard this little song, right?
Nah, dude. I turned 49 today. I'm out of it. Oh, yes.
You've heard that. We've all heard that.
My kids, yes.
All right,
I got it.
I'm going some...
Uh-oh.
Sorry.
Got a cough button.
No.
Your plug came out?
Yeah, I couldn't hear myself for a minute. I'm going somewhere with this, though.
Gotcha.
So we're at the Knights game last night, and they played the San Jose Sharks. And you know how much fun the in-game production is with T-Mobile and the Golden Knights. And it's 6-0 late in the game. Knights are up. I think there's about 10 minutes left in the game. And, it's a big game, big rivalry for these two teams now in the Pacific Division. And there's a lot of chippiness going on late in the game. And the Sharks were frustrated. They couldn't do anything. The crowd was into it. Knights are dominating. And there's a bunch of scrums. I mean, you're having all these after the whistle plays now where guys are locking up and you're seeing some little touch jabs. No, the gloves weren't coming off really.
No Ryan Reeves haymakers?
No, none of that, but they're mixing it up. Like guys are getting, they're grabbing each other, they're pulling jerseys. It's very chippy. And Baby Shark comes on. In the middle of the fight? Sharks trying to fight, they're playing this stupid kids song with the funny voice and the Baby Shark. And I tell you what, Scott, that might have been the most energy in a night full of energy.
Yeah.
That the crowd had because people were crying. They were laughing so hard. There's like this, like the old tart chomp, right?
Yeah.
With the shark.
Yeah, with the hands.
And the whole crowd is doing it. And it's basically just this giant troll job to the San Jose Sharks because it's such a hokey, annoying, if you want to call it that, song that gets stuck in your head.
It does.
Hilarious, great moment, perfect timing. But my takeaway, there's the production value that you're going to get in Vegas, right? We love going to the Knights games, not only because we finally have a pro team here in Vegas. We have a team that we can all rally behind, that the community can go, yes, this is finally ours. But it's a lot of fun. Those games are a ton of fun, and it's because the production value is on such a high level going into T-Mobile Arena. They have made it very much a Vegas environment. Hockey has always been a lot of the organ, right? And they've added the organ element this season. But it's kind of that organ, that old baseball feel, if you ever played the old NHL games from back in the early 90s, late 80s, you had that organ song going in the background. That's what it was. And Vegas has changed it. It's instantly different. And the NHL recognized it right away. The Raiders, to tie this into football, have to make sure that they bring in the right people to bring that element to the new stadium, because this is going to be an indoor stadium. We know that, even though you're going to get that nice natural light filtered in.
Yeah,
it's going to be an indoor stadium. This is going to be different than what you had in Oakland. It's going to be very different than what you had in LA. The video board is going to be crisp, clean. You're going to see every detail. The sound is going to be amazing. You're going to have an indoor sound system going. The production value, I think, has to go up as far as Raiders are concerned. Now, that doesn't mean that it has to change from what they've done well. You still have to have the Hells Bells, right? You still got to have that AC/DC playing. You've got to have that mystique, that aura that comes with the Raiders. But the Raiders have already started in Oakland. If you've gone to a game recently, they have the DJ out there. They really try to hype the crowd. You saw Marshawn Lynch dancing last season with the DJ playing and all of that. But they've got to find a way to make it more Vegas-centric, because this city now understands what a fun environment in professional sports is.
Yeah, you have to be entertained in between plays.
Right. And
that's the way it goes.
It started with UNLV. They're the ones who started the light shows before basketball games. And then now the Knights have elevated it to what it is at T-Mobile. The Raiders are going to have to elevate that production value.
And I think they will.
To bring people in there.
When I was last week, I was at a hockey game while you're still cruising, or at Disney World. I
feel like you're a little jealous.
I am, because I've been on them and I miss them. I miss them. It's like a relative I haven't seen.
Why am I here right now?
Exactly. But if you go to the games, we were at the game, and right across the ice from us was Mark Bedane. The Raiders are at Golden Knights games a lot, probably because they're fun to go to, number one, just to hang out. It's another professional sport. But also, I think they are really watching and learning. Okay, they understand that, yes, it's a different environment. It's a smaller crowd, the whole thing, but it is Las Vegas. What is it now that if you're a Vegas pro sports fan, what is it that you expect, to your point, Matt, right? So now the expectation, if you're a Las Vegan or even someone coming in from out of town, and you're going to go to a professional sporting event here, what is it that you expect? The Golden Knights have done a great job of raising that standard overall with game experience, right? Although I think that the pregame video this year sucks. But anyway, but besides that...
it's not as good, right? It's not as good.
But last year was last year. It's still fun.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, so yes, I agree with you. I think they have to do that, and I think they will. And I think that people forget, for those of you who've not been in or lived in an NFL market before in Las Vegas, is that the NFL does things bigger and better than other leagues. It just does. It's the top one. So you have to figure that they're going to do that. And everything that the Raiders have told us individually, off the air, on the record, off the record, has all been that they're going to create an experience that's one of the best in the NFL.
And they should. They need to elevate it. And we've seen... Scott, you probably haven't been because you hate the Rebels now, but UNLV basketball has, for the most part, pretty much always done the same thing with their light show. It's had tweaks here and there, but it's the fireworks, it's the fire coming out of the shot clock and all that. Last season, they installed a whole bunch of new gear, and they've got the video projection on the court now, much like the Knights do on theirs. Yeah. And it's stepped it up a bit. They went, okay, we've got to get better. We can't keep doing the same thing. We got to get better. And I really feel like the Raiders are going to do that. They just need to understand that they have to make it Vegas. It's no longer going to be the Oakland Raiders. It's still going to be the Raiders. So you can't lose that. But you have to add your Vegas element. And I'll take it to New Orleans. If you've ever been to a game in the Dome, there are brass bands that will come out of the concourse up into sections and just play. Yeah. They'll just play for 30 seconds just to give you that New Orleans brass band, French Quarter kind of feel. And you feel like you're in a different place watching a football game. It's not just the NFL. You're in New Orleans during the game, and that's what it needs to be like.
Well, and you're right. I mean, the UNLV experience, which actually was replicated by the Chicago Bulls during their run, it's good to see that UNLV has improved it, and they've gone from 1,400 fans to 1,500 fans. And also, it at least it's better than most of the product they put out there. But anyway, one day, hopefully, I'll be back
for a different day.
Hopefully, one day I'll be back when I get over my hurt. But nonetheless, I agree with you 100%, and I think that they will, and I think that it has to be uniquely Las Vegas. The Golden Knights, with the showgirls they've done this year too, which there are no showgirls anymore. That's kind of sucks about New Las Vegas is there's no shows with showgirls anymore, but it still signifies Las Vegas. So they have them down. You can go take your picture. It's a good touch. I think the Raiders will do that. The Raiders, I have the advantage, I think, that the Golden Knights didn't have, which is somebody who went before them. And then secondarily, Matt, they've had these 3 years to study, and watch. So they should know the market really well before they get here.
The Knights did a really good job of understanding that. You remember when they rebranded Vegas, because they tried to do the theme park at MGM. They tried to make it family friendly, and then they rebranded it and said, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And everybody went, oh, my God, I can go to Vegas and just party. That's what it's all about. And the Knights have said, yeah, that's what you can do here. Even in this arena, that's what you can do. And it very much has that nightlife clubby kind of feel. It's loud music. It's the bass. I mean, that bass on that system will rattle your bones.
Yes.
Quite literally. You can feel everything rattling. And they've really embraced what Vegas nightlife is all about while still engaging everybody, every age group. I mean, kids to grandparents are having a good time and staying engaged in that atmosphere. it's a different game. It's not as fast-paced as hockey. There's not the constant action. There's more breaks. But what that does is that gives you more opportunity to engage the fans with what you're doing in your production. I hope that they are taking notes. I hope that they understand that there is going to be a way to incorporate new Vegas with old Raiders.
No, I agree with you. And it has to be unlike anything else in the entire world, just like our city is.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's what the important point you hit on, Matt, which is it's not just a good NFL experience and it's fun and it's wow, you're doing trendy stuff, which everybody does, like the Shark song you're talking about. Yeah. But it's also about context and about it being Las Vegas, and you have to play into the fact that we are what we are.
Yep.
And that is one of the biggest destinations in the entire world. And oh, by the way, the future home and the longtime home, I'd call it like they do in the world of pets, forever home of the Raiders as they come to Las Vegas. All right, we'll step aside. When we come back, we'll close out the show with a look at the Ravens game here on Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
Back today.
All right, we're back here, Silver and Black today for the last segment before your Raiders, your Las Vegas / Oakland Raiders. I'm putting Las Vegas first now. Sorry, folks. It's the way it goes. If you get mad at me, I apologize, but I don't care.
At me.
At me, bro. Don't tase me now. It's at me, bro. Matt and I are back here in the last segment. We're going to talk a little bit about today's game. Matt, if you look at this game against the Ravens are one of those teams where, and we talked about this last week while you were gone, which is you build a team. The Ravens have been a championship club. They've won Super Bowls. Recently, they've been kind of in the middle, right? Last week, had Chaz Osborne on. He was talking about the Bengals. The Bengals are a team, like, people make fun of Marvin Lewis that he still has his job, but the Bengals have made the playoffs 5 years in a row.
Yeah, they just don't do anything once they get there.
Exactly.
So that what do you want? Do you want mediocrity in the world of playoffs where, you have decent regular seasons, you get to the playoffs every year, but you can't really do anything? I mean, it's that fleeting success where maybe you have those 1 or 2 great years. Maybe you make a Super Bowl run. You don't win the title, but, you were close.
Right.
And then you have 8 years of nothing. Is that better than just always kind of hovering around the playoffs and never really making noise?
Well, and being a San Diego Padres fan on the baseball side, that's always the Padres' goal is to be quote-unquote competitive, which is the biggest cop-out in the world. But nonetheless, some teams in a small market like Cincinnati, okay, fine. You know what? You make the playoffs 5 years in a row, people tend to be happy.
Yeah, but there's no small market in the NFL, in my opinion, because of the way it's structured and because, the smallest market in the NFL is one of the most successful franchises in the NFL in Green Bay.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I think it's very different than baseball because of the salary cap.
Very true, very true. And I will say this though, that when you look at the Ravens have been a team that has always built to win Super Bowls. Mm-hmm. Recently though, they're in a transitional period. Okay, so you have Lamar Jackson now is going to start for the injured Joe Flacco. Of course, a few weeks ago, our own Jay Burrows wrote a story on how Joe Flacco will be the quarterback for the Raiders next year, in essence, or could be.
Was he onto something here?
I think he was. But I think it goes back to, what are you going to see today? I don't think the Raiders defense, which, let's face it, even though they have some individual bright spots and individual players who are playing well, the Raiders defense is beyond deplorable. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think even with Lamar Jackson as a rookie quarterback, I don't think they're going to be able to stop Baltimore enough. And I don't think the Raiders offense can overcome the scrappiness and the grittiness of the Baltimore defense. So I think the Raiders lose by 10 today and don't score very often.
Lamar Jackson's going to go crazy out there because the Raiders don't have linebackers that contain. We've seen the running backs get loose on just little swing routes out of the backfield because linebackers aren't picking guys up coming out of there. The DNs and linebackers don't contain very well on the outside. They, again, in spots they have, but overall they don't. And a guy like Lamar Jackson that can get out on that edge and threaten you with his legs and his arm, I just don't see how the Raiders contend with that. The one thing that could be a positive for the Raiders here, the Ravens are -5 turnover ratio this season.
Yeah.
They're a 5-5 team. It's not like they're playing great football overall. They still have a really good defense, but 5-5, -5 in the turnover margin. The Raiders' 2 wins have come because they've gotten the ball in plus territory.
Yes.
The win against the Browns, where they seem to be starting at the 30, the opponent's 30 every single drive. And then the only 2 touchdowns they had last week, they got the ball in plus territory both times. The 50-yard line and then inside the 30 was the other one because of turnovers. If they can capitalize on the fact that the Ravens do tend to turn the ball over a little bit, then maybe they've got a shot at this. But unfortunately, because of the way that Derek Carr throws the ball and these so many underneath routes and we talked about off air, chunks, right? They're not chunking anybody with these big plays. They're not able to sustain these really long drives of 75 yards and 7 minutes off the clock, culminating in a touchdown. It's 3 and out, or they're getting 6 plays and having to punt because they could only gain 13 yards. I mean, it's just they've got to get the ball in plus territory enough to make a difference.
Well, and you look what happened the last time they ventured east. They played Miami, didn't go too well. Early kickoff, cold weather. It should help having Jordy Nelson back. If Jordy Nelson, and then they can get, like I said, I believe we got to see a lot of Marcell Aitman. If they get Marcell Aitman involved, Jordy Nelson, Jared Cook can take some pressure, get him single coverage. Maybe they can get down. My question is, can they run the ball effectively against this defense, and can they pepper in the passes and get downfield enough to score? I think the problem here today, honestly, is not just the Raider defense. It's going to be the inability of the Raiders offense to score points. Yeah. And I'm talking even kicking. I don't think they're going to be in a lot of position to get down there and score points.
Yeah, they're showing ranks right now for the Baltimore defense. First, second, third. They're one of the best defenses in the NFL, and they always are. That's what the Ravens are built on. They're just that kind of football team. They're always going to be good defensively, going all the way back to the late 90s and early 2000s. The Raiders have to force turnovers. I mean, that's really, in my opinion, the only way that they even stay competitive in this game is if they can continue to get the ball inside the opponent's 50, they'll be able to put up points. And the reason is, we just talked about, Carr doesn't take chunks out of the defense. But if you're starting inside the 50, you don't need to. You only need 5 or 6 plays, and you're already inside the 10-yard line. And that, from there, take your shots.
Well, Kalichi Osemele has to have a good game inside. Gabe Jackson as well. Mm-hmm. They need to run the ball, which is it's an incredible task against this Baltimore defense. Who's great against the run. But while you were gone, by the way, Doug Martin did really well, except for he got injured at the end of the first half last week. By the way, may I add, Doug Martin did well. So if the
is he part of the future, Scott?
No. If the triumvirate of running backs, Washington, Richard, and Martin, can do enough today to open up that intermediary passing game, get Jared Cook open, get Jordy Nelson open, and get Marcell Aitman maybe some balls on the outside, then maybe they're in this game. I think Baltimore's a 12-point favorite, right?
Yeah.
12-point? Yeah, I think it's a 10-point game. And if the Raiders can show, I'm looking for improvement all areas of the game, whether they win or not. Would like to see them win. If they don't, I don't see it happening on the road. I just don't, man.
Well, Lamar Jackson, no touchdowns, 1 interception last week. Make him throw the ball. He had 120 yards rushing. Don't let him beat you with his legs. Make him throw the ball. He's turnover prone, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
young quarterback.
Yeah, young quarterback. And not to say that all he does is throw turnovers. He hasn't got the one interception. I'm saying he's a rookie quarterback coming in here, big situation. They're fighting for playoff life here. They're 5-5. They have to go on a little run here to hope to get a wild card. Maybe you can rattle the kid a little bit. Let's see Arden Key and Mo Hurst get after him. Contain him, keep him from getting outside, and force him to throw the ball, and maybe you can get him to throw a couple to you in that plus territory situation, and let Carr, who is the better, more experienced quarterback, put some points on the board.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking at this. I'm going to call this now. I'm going to call it a 17-7 Baltimore win. I think the Raiders are going to.
That's low.
I know
that's a low score.
I know that defense. I just think Baltimore is going to struggle a little bit with the young guy. They're going to get their points, as I said. I just don't see it being a high scoring game. I could be wrong. What's the over under, David? Do you remember?
I think Lamar Jackson runs for 130 yards in this game.
All right. Well, we are going to cut out now. This has been the Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio. 42 is the
42.
over-under. Okay, thank you, David. I appreciate it. For our engineer, David Stepanian. For Matt Gutierrez, who's back fresh from a vacation. Thanks for joining us again, man.
Yes, sir.
All right, we will be back next week. Make sure you listen to us. Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio. See you later.